a spot in front of my eyes. So we can take our mask off outside. Yeah. Outside. Oh. Ooh.
As a leader, I want to have one more. Thank you.
Here. So we're going to count down from 5, and then when we get to 5, maybe you
have 2 minutes.
Okay, so we're going to count down from 5, and then when we get to 1, we're going to say on deck for a cause. Are we ready?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so 5, 4,
3, 2, 1.
On
deck for a
All
cause.
right, everybody, follow Barbara.
Yeah, you can take off when walking.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
You can take off your mask when walking if you're not comfortable.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. Very good. You know what a ramrod is?
What's the ramrod? Yeah, really.
I'm gonna take a picture. That.
Closest port to where the Titanic sunk. The Titanic sunk about 500 miles further to the south of where we were. The day before St. John's, we still saw some icebergs at sea. The Titanic sunk in April, so that's when you have ice still further south than that as well. So anybody is aware of the connection with Holland America Line, the Titanic? There's a few small connections. We actually, the son of the owner of Holland America Line at the time, he died on board the Titanic. He was on board, we had close contact with White Star Line at the time, who was the owner of the Titanic. We used the same shipyard to build our ships in Belfast. And actually the Statendam 2 was modeled after the Olympic class ship, so after the Olympic and the Titanic. She was smaller, but she was a similar ship's design, which is why the Holland America Line owner was invited to sail on board the Titanic with the shipbuilder and the owner of the company, etc. Also the Noordam was one of the ships that sent the Titanic the last ice warnings before she went in that night. Interesting story. Going back to ice. So I told you already at night and in reduced visibility we use our ship's radars to navigate, and that we needed those in Greenland because we had at night quite dense fog and ice, which is not normally a great combination. So a few things we need to do. A, we need to keep the ship speed low. We were only sailing about 8 knots or so. How do we forecast for ice? We receive ice forecast charts from a few different institutes. One of them is the Danish Meteorological Institute. They publish the ice charts for Greenland, which is pictured on the left, and it will show you what you can expect. So the colored parts is where there still is bigger concentrations of ice. Different colors mean different concentrations. Red, as you can probably guess, is a lot of ice, and green is less. And then those triangles of the coast, they mean that there is icebergs, and the square bits means growlers. So growlers are the smaller icebergs, and the triangles are the bigger ones. And if they're colored in black, that means that there is more. If they're in white, it means there is less. So we can kind of estimate from where on we can expect to see ice in our approach to Greenland. So when we crossed over from Iceland, what we try to do is we run faster than we have to, so that later on, when we are in the ice, we can afford to slow down and still arrive on time. On the right is a chart from the North American Ice Service, and it shows you every degree of latitude and longitude how many icebergs have been reported in that area. So we kind of transited from Greenland up north straight to Newfoundland, St. John's. So we went through that ice where we actually did see a couple of icebergs, and that kind of matches what it says there, 1 to 3 icebergs in one of those 60 by 60 mile squares. So that's what we use for forecasting. And in addition, we had 2 pilots on board for our whole Greenland part of the cruise from Denmark. They are ice pilots for Greenland. They also have access to high-definition satellite images from the Danish Meteorological Institute. And there's 2 examples here. The one on the left is Prince Christian Sound, and you have to speak Danish, but it says there is a few icebergs and growlers in there. You can kind of see the white specks, and they are the icebergs that you can pick out. And the picture on the top right is the approach to a Nanortalik. So in blue they have kind of lined out the shore, so you can distinguish the shore from the icebergs, which are the dotted white specks. Some of them are quite big, and that matches exactly what we saw in the approach to Nanortalik. There was quite a few big icebergs there. So that's kind of how that works, ice forecasting, and the use of our Greenland pilots that were on duty the whole time when we were in the waters of Greenland. So they were doing 6 hours on, 6 hours off on the bridge with 2 of them. In the back of the bridge we have a room called the Safety Center. This is where we control all the ship's safety systems from. So every room of the ship has a smoke detection system and also a high fog sprinkler system to fight any fires. We have fire screen doors that can be closed remotely. And at the bottom of the ship is divided into 18 watertight compartments that can be closed off with hydraulic watertight doors. All of those systems can be operated from the safety center. This big screen is the technical table, it's a touch screen where you can actually operate all of those safety systems from. This is also the operations room. In case of an emergency, this is where the staff captain directs emergency operations and all of our emergency teams from. Yesterday we did a crew drill, so once a week at least we do a crew drill where we do a fire scenario and an abandoned ship scenario. So we exercise all of our fire teams, and we lower some of the lifeboats, we inflate a life raft, and we go through all the emergency procedures with the crew. You can imagine on the ship you have to be self-sufficient. If we're out at sea on the ocean, we have a fire on board, we need to be able to deal with that. We can't call the fire brigade and close the door behind us. So we have trained fire teams, we have our medical team and any other emergency team that we need. in order to deal with any emergency that can happen on board the ship. Going back to pilots, so I mentioned the two Greenland pilots, but going in and out of every port, most ports in the world have compulsory pilotage, so you need to take a local pilot on board who becomes an advisor on the bridge. He or she has the local knowledge of port entry, the forecasted weather, local weather conditions, any other reported traffic, what dock we are assigned to, all of those things. And depending on where we are in the world, sometimes the pilot will go into port. So before we go into port and after we leave, you might have seen the pilot boats that come out to the ship and embark or disembark the pilots. Let's go back to manning. So I mentioned we also have two officers on the bridge at sea when the ship is underway. That's a junior and a senior officer, a second officer and a third officer, and they are the navigator and the co-navigator. Now, in addition to those two officers, we also have two sailors that are trained as the lookouts. So there's always 4 persons on the bridge when the ship is underway. The lookout can also act as the helmsman if we need to go into manual hand steering. We call that green manning with those 4 persons. If we elevate the manning, for example, if there is reduced visibility like today, or if there is heavy traffic, or something like that, we can go up to yellow manning and we can add 1 senior officer to the bridge team, and that can be the captain, the staff captain, or one of the first officers. And then when we go in and out of port, we go to red manning and we add 1 more additional person to the team who becomes the administrator, and the role of the administrator is to take away all the distractions, alarms, phone calls, etc. And you can hear me talk about functions, so navigator, co-navigator, administrator, and not ranks. So we're trying to have a function-based bridge. So even a junior officer can be the navigator. It doesn't have to be the captain that is always driving the ship. Anyone can fill any role, and the reason for that is that we create a safety net where everybody should be comfortable to point out each other's mistakes and not catch any mistakes made. We also train those scenarios. We have a simulator training center.
Boston Airport. Beautiful Boston Airport. Welcome to America. Good morning, America. Today is the August 3rd, 2022. We have a ship approaching Boston, USA, ending about 2.5 months around the globe. Go to from Fort Lauderdale to Canada, to Iceland, and we go back. Iceland. We go to Iceland and top by Southampton in England. And after that, we take a second cruise from England to go to right now. Also, after Southampton, we go to Norway and go all the way to a lot of port in Norway. Go to go to shore and go all the way to north, but we skip the south because the ship carrier at the Captain Center, and we return to our ship, Joe. That's why the captain on the small ship here. They get drunk. Our ship just keep going. Anyway, we keep going, and we go to we skip the one in Soho because our ship a lot going, and we come back to Southampton. Our ship is without our way, our ship here. And then we go to after that we come back to Southampton, and that ended the second cruise. And the third cruise we go to Southampton, we go to Sea, we go to country in Sea, then Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Latvia, and we supposed to go to St. Petersburg, but they canceled that. And after that, we go back. We go back to Copenhagen. Copenhagen that ended the third cruise, Copenhagen, and from there we wait for 4 days to go to board another ship, go back here. And that means this ship, Holland America, we first 3-1 brought to Princess. So we wait for this ship to start. So we go to. So after we took the rental car, took the trip, go to East Germany. We crossed the border from all the sea, go to Rostock in East Germany, and go Essen, the UNESCO city, and go to National Park. You just go see the UNESCO forest park, park there, and after that we go to Berlin. We stay in Berlin 2 days, 2 nights, and we come back. We roll back to Cape Canal, and from there we go back to Copenhagen on July 16. And so this ship started July 16 from Copenhagen. After that, we took the ship to Copenhagen. From Copenhagen, we go to go to Norway, one port in Norway, and after that we go to Iceland, several ports in Iceland, and from Iceland we go to Greenland, several ports in Greenland, and after Greenland we go to Newfoundland. The island belong to English England before, now belong to Canada. And I go to 2 ports in Canada. I go one by another port to Canada, Halifax, and back we come here today, August 3rd, 2022. Very nice trip. If we can do again, I will do again. Very nice trip. Again, it's we come back to Boston, USA. Welcome home.
Tour guide today. I'm a student here at Harvard. I'm going into my second year of 4 years. I'm going to be a sophomore. I'm studying economics with secondary and mind-brain behavior. That's prepared for psychology. I'm from Long Island, New York, about 3.5 hours south of here. But that's enough about me. Time to get to know you guys. So I start out, I'm going to point to you, call out where you're from. So we're start out right over here. Right there. Where are you from? Florida. Germany. All in Germany? South Carolina, all right. Russia. Russia, let's go. Also, you? Okay, the back? All
California.
Right.
California.
San Francisco. San Francisco.
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
New York. New York.
New York, all right.
Canada.
Canada, awesome. So plenty of representation all around the world today. So today's tour will be 3 main themes. First theme is going to be Harvard history. So in case you don't already know, Harvard is ridiculously old. It was founded in 1636. Makes 153 years older than the government of the United States. So unlike our Ivy League rivals, Yale and Princeton, you don't have to fake how old our university is. So what that means is that when we build buildings nowadays, build them in modern architecture styles. So we see a building like Lemon Hall right here, and it looks old, It's actually old. You see a building, looks ugly. It's probably new. There are plenty of 70s architecture, plenty of 70s architecture styles today. That's one great way to track Harvard history. The second theme of today's tour is the famous Harvardians. So with this, I'll point out the yellow house behind me right there. That is Wadsworth House. Wadsworth House was built in 1720. It's been home to 9 university presidents, but the most important president it's been home to is not a university president. It's actually the first president of the U.S., George Washington. So in 1776, when the British occupied Boston, George Washington was right here, the Wadsworth House. His soldiers were in the dorms we'll see today, and he would joke later in his life that he was a Harvard man, even though he never actually graduated. He got an honorary degree from Harvard Law School. The third and final theme of today's tour is going to be Harvard culture. So raise your hand if you've seen Legally Blonde, Bilbo Hunting, anyone? Social Network. It's a very, very unique culture. I'll be the key to that. I'll tell you guys what it's actually like to go here, dispel some myths, tell you guys the facts. But with that being said, we go on to our first stop, which is Johnson Gate. It's down on this road, so we're going to cross here, cross again, go around to the left for our first stop, down there. With that being said, let's get moving.
Королевы Елизаветы. Гарвард 1600 или 600, а Кембридж 1200.
Everyone in the shade. I've learned that.
Yeah.
All right. So right now, we are in Harvard Yard. This is the oldest part of Harvard's campus. This gate right here is Johnson Gate. Johnson Gate was built in 1890 by the same firm that built the Boston Public Library. Historically, it's been known as Lover's Gate. Now the reason for that is in the early 1900s, women were not allowed in Harvard Yard, and as a result, Harvard boyfriends would have to kiss their Radcliffe girlfriends goodbye under Lover's Gate. Since then, times have changed. The name has stayed. We still to this day do call it Lover's Gate. There's a bit of a superstition about Lover's Gate, and that is you're only supposed to pass under the center of the gate 2 times in your life. The first time being moving into campus the fall of your freshman year. The second time being after graduation. Procession will take you out right under Johnson Gate. And if not, it said you'll be cursed by the ghost of John Harvard, which is why I brought you to the side of the gate. Thank you later. This building right here, this is Massachusetts Hall. Mass Hall is the oldest academic building on campus. It was built in 1719. It was home to 5 founding fathers of the United States. Most notably would be John Adams, the 2nd president of the U.S., John Hancock, the 1st and largest signer of the Declaration of Independence, and third, and in my opinion the most important, the guy in the beer bottle, Sam Adams, also in there. Nowadays, the bottom 3 floors are no longer dorms, but taken up by the offices of the president of the university. So President Backow and his staff are on the bottom 3 floors. However, the top floor is still actually home to 14 freshman students a year. So these 14 students are actually handpicked by the university president to live on top of him. So they use transcript scores and interview scores to make the 14 most quiet and studious students on campus, and it's very much considered an honor to be put into Mass Hall. Unfortunately, I was not put into Mass Hall this morning. Like any good student who knew how to procrastinate, waited until Sunday to start his paper. The library would close at 10 p.m. and open on Monday, 8 a.m. And he arrived Sunday at the library at 8 p.m. He goes in, he goes to the John Harvard Rare Book Collection, picks out the book. The name of his book is Christian Warfare Against the Devil. He starts writing for 2 hours, the clock strikes 10, but he's nowhere near done with this paper. He's in a bit of a dilemma. He actually either sneaks the book out or takes the bad grade. Any ideas?
Takes the bad grade.
Should have. So he sneaks the book out, goes to his dorm. He writes until about 6 a.m. the next morning. At this point, he's finished his paper. He wanted to go back to the library to put the book back before anyone else knew he had the book. So he walks across campus, and he thinks he's hallucinating, when as the sun is rising, Harvard Hall is in ashes. The entire building burns down. In it, the university library, the John Harvard Rare Book Collection, all the portraits of John Harvard. So we now have a second dilemma. He had the last book from the John Harvard Book Collection in his hands. So he has to either pocket the book, keeps it in his family for a couple generations, or does he go to the president and give it back? What do you guys think he does? Should have kept it. What'd you say? Okay, so he goes to the university president. Says, President Holyoke, I'm so sorry for the loss of Harvard Hall. I had to have this book out the night of the fire. Hopefully this can be of some solace to the university as it looks to move forward. To this, President Holyoke, thank you so much for living up to our honor code. Really appreciate it. You're expelled, and the student was kicked out on the spot. He'll be allowed in about a couple of years down the road to finish his degree, but to this day, the book, Christian Warfare Against the Devil, is still in the Harvard Library collection. It's in the Houghton Library. And this building is at the third Harvard Hall, no longer the center of campus, just home for lectures. Before we finish out this area of the tour, let's do a little bit of trivia. So we are in the presence of the most expensive building owned by Harvard on any of their campuses around the world. Most expensive building per square foot, rather. The Whitewater University Hall, very expensive, but not the most expensive. Anyone else? All right. The answer, that's Security Shack right there. So the story behind that being the most expensive building per square foot owned by Harvard, in 1980, the university came to build next to Johnson Gate, keep cars out of Harvard Yard. They built about half of the shack, and then the city of Cambridge got a wind of it, and they said, oh no, anything you build here has to go through us, the Cambridge Historical Committee. So they submitted their blueprint, it was denied. They take down their half-done shack, submitted a second one, denied again, a third, denied again. At this point, they're frustrated, the architecture firm, is how could you screw up a security shack? So they fired them, hired a new one, submitted a fourth. The year is no longer 2022, it is now 1636. What do you see all around you? Who said? Yes, that's exactly right. This is one massive cow pasture. So in 1636, Massachusetts Bay Colony founded a new college as their way of showing the Europeans that the New World could be just academic. But in reality, it was quite literally a joke. There was not a single book, professor, student, or building. It was just kind of an idea. For 2 years, went on like this, up until 1638, a man by the name of John Harvard passed away. He gave his cow pasture and his rare book collection to the university, and in his honor, they renamed a new college Harvard College. And because we were founded during the colonial era, we like to say that Harvard grew up as a sibling to the United States. In the 1700s, as the U.S. matured into a full-blown nation, we went from a college to a full-blown university. In 1782, Harvard founded Harvard Medical School as our first graduate school. In the 1800s, as race is a huge issue in the U.S., it's also a huge issue here on campus. 1847 saw the first African-American student admitted to Harvard, but unfortunately for that student, he'd be unable to attend as he would pass away of tuberculosis prior to the fall of his freshman year. Ken was kicked out of the road 23 years. In 1870, Richard T. Greener became the first African-American student to graduate Harvard. He would go on to be the dean of Howard University. By the 1900s, this yard looks something like it does today, and so does the university. There's still one thing missing. Any ideas? We had trees at that point. Had buildings. Memorial in Washington, D.C. But as for this piece of his work, it's actually the third most photographed statue in the United States. I don't know the first two. Lincoln's number 2. The reason for that is that's the crossroads of campus. Everything behind me is going to be by and large academic. It's where you go for your classes during the day. Everything to the south of me is going to be residential by and large. A couple classrooms, but mostly residential. As for this building right here, this is the Science Center itself. It's the 1970s, pretty rough time. U.S., inflation, Watergate, recession, Vietnam War, disco, all 9 yards. As for the university, we get all the architecture. So you might ask, what happened and why is this built the way it is? So the Polaroid family donated about $100 million to creation of the Science Center. And as a result, they wanted to model it after a Polaroid camera. So out here in front would be the lens. Up top, the observatories would be the clicker. And it's supposed to be a 1920s Polaroid camera. As a result of its design, as you go up on each floor, the floors get smaller and smaller and smaller. The equipment in the labs gets more and more and more expensive. The classes also get harder and harder and harder. And because of this, there's kind of a theory among students. You can tell how smart someone is by asking them what floor they take their classes out of the Science Center. Me personally, I'm an economics guy, not a science guy. I had 2 classes inside there. First one was second floor. The second one was quite literally the basement. My friends make fun of me all the time for that. As for that building down there, that would be Memorial Hall. Memorial Hall was built in 1870 as a memorial to all the Harvard soldiers who fought and died in the American Civil War. The largest donor included a stipulation, and he only wanted Union soldiers memorialized inside there. So as a result, the Confederate soldiers are not memorialized on campus. Although it is a memorial, it's actually a very, very useful building. So what do you guys think goes on inside Memorial Hall? Any ideas? Anyone? Oh, that's Memorial Church. What's that next? Anyone else? Alright, so inside of there, if you have any Harry Potter fans here today, the Hogwarts Dining Hall modeled after that. So inside, it's high vaulted ceilings, the largest collection of Tiffany stained glass in the world, long wooden tables, no floating candles, just chandeliers. The food, however, not as good. That is why there are 3 food trucks behind me, because no one wants to eat in there. That being said, we're going to go on to Memorial Church for our next stop down here. 20. That would be Memorial Church. It's built as a memorial to all the Harvard soldiers who fought and died in the First World War. Since then, it's been updated to include World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and any other conflict which a Harvard soldier fought and died. Unlike Memorial Hall, inside Memorial Church. It does not matter what side you fought for, died serving your nation, you're inside here. So on the south wall, there are about 1,100 names of Harvard soldiers who have died in service to their nation. As for this area out here, this would be Tercentenary Theater. So about 2 months ago, there were 20,000 folding chairs here on this lawn graduation. That's actually not enough seating. There are about 15,000 people in standing room only. And right over here on top of the stairs, that would be the stage. That metal plank would be where the podium would go. President of the university, the faculty, and the keynote speaker will all be sitting right here on the stage. As for speakers, we've had some pretty famous keynote speakers. The year President Kennedy was assassinated, he gave the commencement address to the Harvard graduates. Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, J.K. Rowling, also the guy that played Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen, Conan O'Brien. This year, it was the Prime Minister of New Zealand. So every year, they bring in an A-list to give one last lecture. As for that, this building behind me, that would be Widener Library. That's going to be our next stop on the tour. So we're going to walk on down there for our next stop.
No Republicans given the commencement address.
I don't think, actually, they have a student speak, I think, every year, but I don't even know. Yeah.
That would be the point.
Yeah. I mean, they have a lot of Harvard grads into the speeches. Yeah, it's a Harvard grad, so.
That's not exactly.
Yeah. I'm sure if that's the policy, they would have to take it. Yeah. We'll see how long that lasts, though.
Yeah, it's about to end.
Right here for our next stop under the shade. This is on the grass right there. As we're walking over, you guys can see the motto on top of the doorway. It reads Veritas. Veritas is our motto. In Latin, it means truth. All right. So right now, we are at the Widener Memorial Library. This building right here is the new crown jewel of campus, cornerstone to the Harvard Library system. It was built in 1915. It's named after Harry Elkins Widener, a Harvard graduate of the class of 1909. So you might ask what happened between 1909 and 1915 that this student got his name on a building. So after graduation, Harry Elkins Widener is a bookworm. He wanted to go to Europe to go find some rare books. So he went around England, Germany, France, and Italy, hunting down rare books for 3 years. He found flowers in a vase on his desk. This will happen in perpetuity as part of the agreement. The third and final stipulation, as I said before, Mrs. Widener was convinced the day that she died, that had her son known how to swim, had she taught him how to swim, he would have survived that night. And she wanted every Harvard graduate going forward to know how to swim. So between 1915 and 1994, every Harvard student had to do a 50-yard swim test in honor of the distance Harry Widener was the lifeboat. And in 1994, it was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, citing the Americans with Disabilities Act. And since then, the test is no longer required. However, they still do offer free swimming lessons to anyone who does not know how to swim. With that being said, on a lighter note, we're going to go over to the old yard and talk about freshman life down there. So stay moving.
They
as I said before, all these brick buildings around us, the exception of Harvard Hall, are the freshman dorms. And each one has its own unique history, its own unique alumni. Starting down there would be Thayer Hall. Next to Thayer would be Hallworthy Hall. Hallworthy was home to Henry David Thoreau. Down there as well would be Stoughton and Hollis. Across from us right here is Matthews Hall. Matthews Hall was home to Matt Damon during his time here. Over Matthews would be Strauss. Strauss is home to Mark Zuckerberg. Down there, that would be Wigglesworth. We call it Wig. Wig was home to Bill Gates during his time here. He dropped out in 1975, became the richest man in the world. He got his honorary degree in 2007. This building right here would be Gray's. Gray's was built in 1863. It's called the Harvard Hilton because inside there was the first dorm set of running water. As for famous alumni, does anyone know the name Ted Kaczynski? Who is it? Yeah. So the Unabomber is right here in Gray's. This building here behind you guys, that would be Weld Hall. They say Weld is home to the smartest Harvard students. So President Kennedy was in Weld. W.E.B. Du Bois was in Weld. Also, astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson was in Weld. Yours truly in Weld. So President Kennedy was in Weld 37. In the 1970s, they came to renovate the building. There were rumors that Weld 37 was haunted. So to remedy it, the university took an elevator shaft, put it right through his room. So it's kind of an ongoing joke that even if you graduate, become the president of the U.S., avoid nuclear war, you'll still inevitably get the shaft at the university. That being said, we're going to go on down to the river houses for the next stage of the tour down there. We're going to cross Mass Ave. Let's stick together. It gets kind of busy. Anyone gets cut off, we'll wait for them. But with that being said, let's get going this way. Actually, the most varsity teams of any college in the U.S., we have 42 varsity teams. As for American football, the rules are actually very much intertwined with Harvard history. So in 1904, Harvard made their new beautiful stadium, Harvard Stadium, across the river. And in 1905, during that college football season, 18 players died. And that is kind of a problem. The game was becoming way too violent. They called the conference to talk about how they can limit the deaths in college football. There were two options. The first option was supported by Yale, and this was to widen the field. Harvard, having just built their stadium, obviously couldn't support that. So our delegate to the convention was Teddy Roosevelt, and he supported adding a forward pass. And because Harvard Stadium could not be widened, they actually adopted the forward pass. And to this day, Harvard history affects your daily life. Small fun fact. As for our biggest rival would be Yale. They've been playing them football going back to the 1800s. We've also had a war going, a prank war rather, that going back just as long. So the most famous prank happened in 2004. In that year, Harvard was hosting the game. Harvard Stadium is one big horseshoe. The ends of the horseshoe being the student section of Harvard and Yale, and the straightaways being where the Cambridge police in handcuffs. No one knows what's going on. The Conan and 50 of his buddies storm the house, take the chair, and leave. And they knew they couldn't hold on to the chair forever. So that year during graduation, after the president of the university was done speaking, Conan O'Brien stage and stole the mic. His buddies took out the chair, put out the chair on the stage in front of 35,000 people. Conan sat on the chair, and then a 10-minute ceremony giving back the chair to the Harvard Crimson. And to this day, the chair of the editor-in-chief is now bolted to the floor inside the Crimson Clubhouse. So before we